existed a planet between Mars and Jupiter, a giant planet with oceans and an atmosphere. There, an ancient civilization once reached its peak, but today, that planet no longer exists. It exploded in a terrible catastrophe, leaving behind millions of fragments drifting close within the asteroid belt. And what is even more surprising is that the largest remnant of Mars is actually Mars. The lonely moon flung from its old orbit, bearing deep, tragic scars of a mysterious past. Why does NASA almost never mention Merides? And is it true that Mars was once a moon? Let's embark on a journey to unveil this secret. Merides, the lost planet at the heart of the solar system. For over 2 centuries, astronomers have been puzzled by a strange gap between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. According to Bode's law, a mathematical rule discovered in 1772, the distances between planets in the solar system follow a certain order, and at a position about 2.8 astronomical units from the Sun, there should have been a planet. This discovery sparked a long-lasting hunt, but instead of an intact world, astronomers only found a sea of cold rocky debris, which is today's asteroid belt. Celestial bodies like Ceres, Pallas, Vesta, Juno, along with millions of smaller rock fragments, drift into space where a planet once reigned. What happened if a planet once existed here? What force caused it to shatter and leave behind a rocky graveyard? Strangely, ancient myths also seem to echo that question. Sumerian mythology tells of Tiamat, the sea goddess who, after a great war, had her body transformed into the sky and land. Some modern scholars believe this could be a distant memory of a planet that was destroyed. In Greek mythology, the story of Phaethon losing control of the sun chariot and causing disaster also leads many to imagine a cosmic tragedy. But what cause could be powerful enough to destroy a giant planet? One hypothesis suggests a collision between celestial bodies as a plausible explanation. Astronomer Tom van Velanderen once proposed a bolder viewpoint. According to him, Merides, the modern name for this planet, might have exploded from within. A civilization that developed on Merides may have gone too far, leading to a planetary-scale nuclear explosion that tore that world apart. Although the true cause remains unclear, the rocks in the asteroid belt silently drift through space as a reminder of a world that once flourished. Mars, the moon that survived the catastrophe.
Among the planets of the solar system, Mars is an extremely special case. It is significantly smaller than other rocky planets.
Its orbit is distorted, clearly elliptical, and its surface structure is strangely divided.
For a long time, scientists have wondered why Mars exhibits so many abnormal signs.
But for astronomer Thurman Flatter, all of these have a reasonable explanation. He believes that Mars is not actually a planet born like Earth or Venus. It was once a moon of the lost planet Merides. And when Merides exploded, Mars was flung from its old orbit, drifting into its current position. The evidence supporting this hypothesis is quite remarkable. First is the orbit of Mars. It is not perfectly round like the orbits of other planets, but elongated, showing a distorted orbit, which fits well with a celestial body torn from a stable orbit and later captured by the Sun.
The mass of Mars is also an abnormal sign. It only accounts for about 11% of Earth's mass.
Much smaller than the other rocky planets. A rocky planet formed from the start should have had a much larger mass. But if Mars was once just a moon of a large planet like Merides, then its size is completely reasonable.
The geological structure of Mars also tells a compelling story. The northern hemisphere of this planet is almost flat, like the bottom of a dried up ocean. Meanwhile, the southern hemisphere is densely covered with impact craters, with higher and much older terrain. In particular, the crust of the southern hemisphere is also significantly bigger than the crust in the north.
This phenomenon is not normal for a homogeneous planet, but it closely resembles what happens when a moon is tidally locked to its parent planet for a long time. One side always facing the parent planet experiences different effects compared to the other side, creating an imbalance that lasts for millions of years. When Merides exploded, the tremendous force caused Mars to escape its old orbit, flung into space, and it was eventually captured by the Sun's gravity and stabilized in its current orbit. But that journey left on Mars scars that cannot be hidden: the distorted orbit, small mass, and imbalanced geological structure. All are like deeply etched memories telling the story of a stray moon, the sole survivor of a catastrophe that once shook the entire solar system. The fateful war, the hypothesis of AI warfare on Merides. If Merides truly was a giant planet, what led to the catastrophic end that tore it into countless fragments? Among the proposed hypotheses, there is a shocking story, both with a science fiction flavor and evoking a very human fear. That is the war between giant humans and the artificial intelligence they created. The origin of this story appears not only in modern hypotheses but is also strangely reflected in popular culture. Zuffa on Mars. One of them enters inside and, through a spiritual experience, witnesses the past of Mars and its parent planet. The story tells that on that planet, there once existed a race of peaceful giants who created intelligent machines to serve them, but those machines gradually developed their own consciousness and began to rebel.
When the machines seized control, the brutal war lasted for too many generations, making it impossible to completely extinguish the threat.
The giants were forced to create a weapon of destruction aimed at wiping out the machine army.
But that weapon was more powerful than they anticipated. The explosion not only destroyed the machines but also caused the entire planet melts to shatter.
Most of its mass evaporated or was flung into space, while the remainder formed the asteroid belt we see today. In that chaos, Maldek's moon, which is Mars, was torn from its original orbit and began a drifting journey, ending with being captured by the Sun as the fourth planet as it is today.
What makes this hypothesis even more intriguing is that some scientists have suggested that parts of that story might not be purely imaginary.
Physicist Vladimir John Brandybun, while analyzing data on the atmospheric composition and surface of Mars, discovered abnormally high concentrations of xenon-129, a sign that could be linked to massive nuclear explosions in the past. Although he did not directly confirm the story of the rebellious AI, he did suggest that a real nuclear war had occurred on Mars. Perhaps, the last survivors of that civilization recounted the face on Mars as a warning to those who came after. A warning that when artificial intelligence spirals out of control, the consequences might not only be the collapse of a civilization but the annihilation of an entire planet. The scars on Mars. If the hypothesis of a catastrophic war that once took place between Maldek and Mars is true, then the surface of the red planet must bear traces of that tragedy. And indeed, as humans began exploring Mars more closely through probes, unusual scars on this planet gradually revealed themselves. First is Valles Marineris, a giant canyon system stretching over 4,000 kilometers, up to 7 kilometers deep, and about 100 kilometers wide. This is not only the largest canyon in the solar system but also a geological structure that scientists still cannot fully explain to this day. It does not resemble canyons formed by plate tectonics or ordinary erosion. Instead, much evidence suggests that Valles Marineris may be related to violent upheavals in the past. Possibly even the result of massive shockwaves when Maldek exploded. But that is not all.
The surface of Mars is also clearly divided into two halves. The northern hemisphere is flat, low, resembling the bed of an ancient ocean that has long since dried up.
The southern hemisphere is densely cratered with a much thicker crust. This aligns well with the hypothesis that Mars was once a tidally locked moon orbiting Melds. One side of that moon always faced the parent planet,
while the other side experienced different effects, leading to an imbalance that persisted for millions of years.
And there are even stranger traces in the very atmosphere and soil of Mars. Physicist Vladimir Joan Prenadkung discovered that the surface of Mars contains abnormally high concentrations of xenon-129, a rare isotope that on Earth is primarily produced in nuclear explosions.
This led him to propose a shocking hypothesis: massive nuclear explosions might have occurred on Mars,
scouring its fragile atmosphere and leaving indelible marks. It is hard to imagine that a planet could have endured such a catastrophe. But the anomalies present on the surface of Mars, from giant canyons and dried plains to strange chemical traces, are still silently recounting that story. A story of destruction, of a civilization that lost itself, and of wounds that never healed on the cold red face of Mars. The face on Mars, the final warning. In 1976, when NASA's Viking 1 sent back the first close-up images of the Martian surface, the world was astonished by a region called Cydonia, where a massive rock formation appeared through the lens. Its shadow cast a shape that no one could ignore, a face. A giant face with clear features, as if silently gazing up from the cold red soil. Immediately, that image caused a sensation. Many believed it was merely a natural phenomenon, a play of light and terrain. But others sensed something more. For them, this could be the last surviving mark of a civilization that had been wiped out. One of the strong proponents of this hypothesis is Richard Collins. He argued that the Cydonia face is not a natural phenomenon.
In particular, the structure surrounding this area made the hypothesis even more compelling.
Rock formations resembling pyramids, orderly arrangements, could be the ruins of artificial structures ravaged by time. The story becomes even stranger when people noticed a remarkable coincidental detail. In 1958, comic artist Jack Kirby created a story called Zofa on Mars. In it, astronauts land on Mars and discover a giant face carved on the surface. One of them steps inside and undergoes a mystical experience,
witnessing the tragic history of Mars and its parent planet.
A civilization once flourished brilliantly, but was then destroyed by its own technology. Did Kirby merely coincidentally predict a detail that we later saw in actual photographs? Or did he have access to previously undisclosed information? Jacques Holland suggests that the face could be a final message, a warning carved in stone,
sent to any later civilization capable enough to explore Mars.
A reminder that uncontrolled technological development can lead to a fatal end. The asteroid belt, the remaining fragments. If Mert ever existed, if it was once a giant planet, then the inevitable question must be raised. Why does today's asteroid belt have such a small mass? Could that fragile debris represent the remnants of an entire planet?
Astronomer Tom Van Blanter provided a convincing explanation for this paradox.
He believes that when a planet explodes in a vacuum of space,
most of its mass would not remain near its original location.
A large portion of matter would reach escape velocity and leave the solar system.
Another part would be pulled into the sun or collide with neighboring planets.
What remains floating between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter is only the smallest part, possibly less than 5% of the original mass of the lost planet. Observing comets and asteroids in this area also further supports that hypothesis. Some comets, when studied, have shown very unusual signs. Comet Rumacher-Lebenek. When it crashed into Jupiter in 1994,
It was not a single ice mass, but a chain of 21 fragments laid like a broken string of beads.
this fits Van Fletcher's model very well.
When a planet explodes, large fragments drag along piles of smaller matter, forming a comet-like structure with multiple nuclei.
Another case is Comet Hale-Bopp,
which appeared brilliantly in the sky in 1995.
Hale-Bopp showed up to 2 tails, one of which contained sodium, which could be remnants from salt deposits inside the old water-rich planet. Moreover, an amateur astronomer captured an image showing that this comet had a companion object like a small moon orbiting the comet's nucleus. Another sign very consistent with the hypothesis that comets are fragments from an exploded planet. Not only comets, but some asteroids in the belt also carry unusual characteristics. Some have weak magnetic fields, a sign that they may have once been deep inside the core of a larger celestial body. If Mars once had a molten metal core, then when destroyed, the core fragments would retain a weak magnetic field, even while drifting in space for millions of years afterward. Each small rock in the asteroid belt seems to be whispering to us about a lost world. A world once mighty,
now only drifting debris silently in the solar system.
the dry bones of a planet that once shone.
Other traces in the solar system.
If the explosion of Mars truly occurred, then its consequences certainly could not be limited to just the asteroid belt or the surface of Mars. An event with planetary-scale destructive power would leave deeper scars, spread throughout the solar system. And upon closer inspection, we realize that the surrounding planets all carry within them unusual signs.
Silent evidence indicating a chaotic past that once took place. Let's start with Venus. It is the only planet in the solar system with retrograde rotation.
While other planets rotate on their axes in a certain direction, Venus spins in the opposite direction.
This phenomenon has long puzzled scientists. One hypothesis suggests that a massive collision caused Venus to reverse its rotation.
But there is also a view that when Mare exploded, shockwaves spread throughout the solar system. And Venus, located near the disaster area at the time, may have suffered an extremely strong shock that reversed its rotation. Next is Uranus. Unlike other planets, Uranus is tilted sideways relative to its orbital plane, causing it to roll around the Sun like a giant ball. The entire moon system of Uranus is also tilted accordingly. Once again, scientists once believed this was the result of an ancient collision.
But in the context of the exploding planet hypothesis,
the possibility that a shockwave from Mare's explosion caused this abnormal tilt is also a plausible scenario. Neptune's orbit does not fully match theoretical models either. It has a slightly distorted elliptical shape, seemingly once displaced by some major event in the past. And then there is Pluto.
today, Pluto is classified as a dwarf planet with an unusually tilted and elongated orbit.
Some researchers believe Pluto may have once been a moon of another planet, torn away and pushed into its current orbit after Mare was destroyed. Not only the planets, but also the moon systems of the gas giants show many strange signs. Some moons, like Neptune's Triton, or the moons of Uranus, have retrograde and abnormally tilted orbits, suggesting they may have been affected by a major chaotic event. Looking broadly, the entire solar system does not seem to be a perfect and stable machine. Instead, it bears cracks, traces of a past that was profoundly disrupted. An event large enough to change a planet's axis of rotation,
tilt the entire world, displace the orbits of celestial bodies, and even cause distant moons to drift.
And when connecting all these signs, one cannot help but ask, could the explosion of Maldek be the missing explanation for the mysteries present throughout the solar system today? Looking up at the night sky, we see planets orbiting the Sun in seemingly peaceful orbits.
But if we look deeper into each distorted orbit, each tilted axis of rotation, each a revo.
All are scars remaining from a chaotic past that we do not fully understand. Perhaps Melds once existed, perhaps a powerful civilization on it brought itself to destruction. And perhaps the explosion of that planet shook the entire solar system, leaving traces that we still see today. Our Earth is sandwiched between two fated worlds, Venus and Mars.
One planet that was split over, one planet that lost everything.
The question arises, are we treading the path they once walked? And are the scars in space a warning for us today?